There are various features of undertaking the design and implementation of a pay survey that we need to be aware of so that we don't trip ourselves up and head off down a blind alley. Typically, an organisation will undertake a pay survey using a relatively straightforward so-called benchmark approach. So this approach is broadly described by the identification of a range of jobs from within your own job structure that represent the range of jobs that they find within that structure. So we want to make sure maybe that we have some jobs that are towards the bottom end of our job structure, some at the top and some in the middle. That we have a good mix of jobs between job types so that we go into the pay survey with a fairly representative sample of work that we find from within our organisation. Once we have this sample of jobs, then the task simply becomes about finding similar jobs within the survey, matching them, and then identifying the range of pay elements that we can use to get some sense of what the market rates of different types of pay might be for that sample of jobs. And if we've done the job properly and we've chosen a representative sample and we've matched them well to the jobs within the survey, then we're in a position to broadly apply that market data to the rest of the jobs within our job structure. Now, of course, there are practical challenges of doing that well, of making sure that we don't choose too many jobs to include in the sample, so that we give ourselves a big administrative task, but also that we don't choose too few, so that the jobs are unrepresentative or that they miss some important edge cases within our job structure. It's sometimes quite difficult to match the jobs within our own organisation to jobs within the sample. And sometimes we might fall into the trap of just looking to find jobs that have similar job titles, rather than actually looking beneath the surface, going into the job descriptions and finding good close comparisons. And sometimes those similar jobs maybe just aren't there. Maybe we have something which is quite unique. So there are various challenges of undertaking this standard benchmarking approach to the conduct of a pay survey. But in essence, that is the basis of how an organisation might attempt to go out and undertake this kind of competitive market analysis. We'll look at three different alternatives that can help us deal with some particular circumstances, some particular challenges of undertaking a pay survey. The first one would be to deal with particular jobs where the dynamics, the market dynamics of what happens to the rates of pay within that job might be quite unusual. So it may be, for example, that we have a job where the amount of time that somebody spends in that job becomes an important factor, that we end up seeing a very large disparity between somebody who's just entered that career and someone who's really established in that career. And sometimes those differences can be exacerbated by with very different rates of pay available at different ends of the market. So somebody who's in quite a skilled position, a very skilled engineer, say, who will be able to command quite an attractive rate of pay even at the early stages of their career, but as they are really well established, have a very good track record, that they become extremely valuable in the marketplace. And so we need to have a process by which we can track not just the rate for that job, but also to be able to distinguish between the rates of pay at different market positions for different points in that typical person's career within that role. And that's the so-called global approach, where we can track across both of those dimensions. We may also find some difficulties if we've used a skill or a competence-based approach to distinguishing people within our own internal structure, because whilst the matching of job types between our internal job structure and a pay survey can sometimes be challenging, matching across levels of skill can be even more difficult. And there's no really effective way of dealing with this problem, but the so-called low-high approach provides us with a kind of rough and ready approach to approximate the way that we might deal with this. So because of the difficulties of matching all these individual jobs, the approach that we might take would be simply to take the lowest person in our structure and find equivalent people in pay surveys and price those roles, those jobs, and then take the highest person in our skill-based structure and do the same there, and then basically join those points on the graph with a straight line, so that we can approximate a market-based approach that makes sense for this kind of situation. The final edge case will be where we have a job which seems to be quite unique, where we can't find appropriate matches in our pay survey to be able to say, well, that is the job that's like ours, that's similar, so we can price it. And so what we may have to do is to take what we call a market basket approach, whereby we identify the various elements of this unique job within our organisation, that they do certain things which are like these kinds of jobs that we can find in the survey. And then there are other elements of the job that are like these other kinds of roles that we can match to in the survey, and so on and so forth. So we disaggregate all of those elements of our super job, our unique job. We identify about what proportion of their overall work is encapsulated within those elements, and then we market price each element and then apply the percentages so that we get the shares of market value according to how much of those things they actually do in their work. And then maybe we have to apply a premium because of their unique status. So maybe all of those other sub-elements are priceable in the marketplace, but because we don't see all of these things all together, then this person has some additional rarity value. And so we add all of those things together and come up with an overall market value for their particular role, even when they are unique and there's not a single job that we can price them against. When we're conducting the study, then we will be presented with lots of different types of pay information. Typically, a pay survey will, at the very least, provide you with the levels of base pay for the jobs that we've included within our sample. But we may want to go beyond base pay because of the importance of the pay mix, that all of the elements that we may put together within our pay offering need to be considered alongside of each other in order to get a really proper understanding of where our offering might be in relation to our competitors in the labour market. So we may also look for, say, a measure of total cash, so the level of base pay plus other bonus or short-term incentive elements, because it may be that some of our competitors might be relatively uncompetitive or relatively mean on base pay, but very generous on bonus or other incentives. And that if we don't want to trip ourselves up by imagining that we can easily be more competitive by just looking at the base pay, and then we've completely ignored these important market factors that our other competitors are prioritising and actually able to present a much more competitive offering than we have, simply because we haven't made ourselves aware of all of the elements of the pay mix that are important within our little bit of the marketplace. We might even go further than that and incorporate all of the elements of so-called total reward. So not just base pay, not just bonus, but also other things like share options or benefits. That all of these things together represent what our competitors are offering. Now, it may be that those things are, when we do the analysis, that those things don't appear to be important, that there doesn't seem to be much difference between the total reward, total cash and base pay all kind of move in the same direction when we plot them on the graph. But it may be that we distinguish some important features, that for particular points in our structure, certain elements of reward seem to take on a greater priority, that certain points, certain types of work need to be rewarded using particular types of reward elements. And we can use that as important market intelligence for us to make sure that we put together the kinds of reward packages that are going to be attractive to the kinds of people that we want to recruit to our organisation. The final thing that we need to think about in terms of the design of our pay survey is an important one, which is who exactly are we going to compare ourselves to? We don't necessarily want to compare ourselves to everybody that recruits people within our labour market, because we may not be effectively competing with them. We may never imagine that we can compete with them. It may be that, especially if we're a relatively small operator, that we're not able to compete with some of the market leaders in our area, because these are people maybe with much bigger pockets than we have, and we simply have to recruit in a different part of the labour market. So we need to make a judgment about who it is that we can compete with. And so we need to look at elements like company size, at the structure of the organisation. If we're a small operation operating out of one room, competing with a multinational just simply may not be tenable. We need to look at turnover, we need to look at profitability, so that we can make a more realistic reading of who to include, who our relevant competitors might be, and who we should just forget about for now in terms of our competitive stance.